All right, I think we are on the air saying hello in chat and reminding people to ask questions and suggest topics because today is all about you, the audience. So you should let us know what you would like us to talk about. And so until then, let's do a little bit of boilerplate just to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to share my presentation. And I'd like to thank Madge over at Magic PR for being our non-paying sponsor. How does that work? Well, we're doing research into press releases this year. Do they work? Do they not work? And we're talking about it. We are having Madge on the show to talk about what he knows about them. And so we're trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. My personal experience is when done properly, they work really well. Now, they don't work in all cases because you have to get data to figure out how many you need to move the needle, and then they need to be executed properly to move the needle. So that's kind of the art form. What do you think, Lee?
No, there's you have to look at the two different things, and Madge talks about this a lot. There's PR for links, and there's PR for um, actual PR, and those are two very different things. You've talked about that. I think Eric Schwartzman came on and talked about old school, PR and those sort of things. So it depends on the situation and what it is you expect of those things. Not all links, you know, there are times when links are appropriate and they work, and there's sometimes they won't. And it's not that it's a press release or it's a this, or a cloud link or a Web 2.0 or whatever it is. It's just that's not what the issue is. So I think a lot of times getting clarity on what it is that you're expecting from your links, whether it's a press release or something else, is where we go awry as SEOs.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And so, keep in mind that you need data to use press releases for SEO. So it's important that you figure out, what deficit you're addressing with it, and you figure out, is it the right tool for the job? If you need 50,000 backlinks to compete, then, a press release isn't going to do that. So you got to know, understand how the tool's used and where it's applicable. But with that, let's briefly touch a few other things. Is it last chance to get in on this round of training, or are the
It is.
doors closed?
The doors are not closed, but it's getting close because I am actually traveling a little bit over this weekend and the first couple of days of next week. So the time to schedule a talk with me is coming to a close. But I'm excited about this particular group. We've got some fun people coming in. We've got a number of different people, repeating the training, and that always makes it fun. And we've got some new little things up our sleeves for this particular round to make it more entertaining and more impactful for people. So if you're
Yeah.
interested, just hit me up on Skype and we'll talk about it.
And if you didn't know, Lee has the best training or the best sales page for his training ever. And it is so awesome. It doesn't even have a buy button because
Yep.
you have to schedule a meeting with him and he has to make sure that it's appropriate for you to be spending your money in this way. He doesn't want absolute beginners or anything. He doesn't want mom and pops who don't know how to tune a page. He doesn't want to take money for the sake of taking money. He wants to help people get to a next level. But to do that, you have to be at a level for it to be effective.
Yeah,
And so that's what the screening is for. It's not for everyone, but if you talk to people who have taken it, it's powerful. It'll get you somewhere new.
cool.
All right.
Spring train.
Reminder, SEO spring training's coming up. So this is probably an event that'll sell out again this year. They seem to sell out every year. It's one of the best conferences of the year. So highly recommend you check it out. Um, it's also a great business expense. You know, learning and improving your skills is always a great business expense. But you
And
know, if you can't afford it, that's okay too.
I was also going to say, Clint was talking about they're still arranging some cool things for people because they know that one of the events they have is a golf event. Not everybody golfs, so they're talking about some very very cool alternate events for those that don't want to go play golf. So it sounds like it's going to be the social aspects of it are going to be pretty cool. In addition to all of the talented SEOs that are coming to speak.
Honestly, I don't know how they make money on these events because they do all the catering and they often have the open bar events and the swag that they're giving out and the cost of doing the event. Um, yeah, you know, a lot of people go broke doing SEO conferences, and these guys seem to top them all on the value. And I don't know how they do it. Maybe it's a money laundering scheme or something. But it's a great event. I think I met Charles in person for the first time at this event. Is that correct? Is my memory serving me?
Actually, we met, it was at an event, but it was at a SMX year. There wasn't even an SMX, it was a side event from an
Oh
SMX
yeah, yeah,
like
out by the
5 years.
water in Seattle.
Yeah, yeah, that was years ago. But I guess we our second introduction was definitely at the spring training, and my first with Lee, and actually my first in-person introduction with most of everybody was with spring training, which is again just to give a plug for everybody for conferences in general. And I know we've talked about this many times. If you can go to conferences, great, go to conferences. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can go, make sure that you break out of your shell, talk to people. Everyone is very friendly. Everybody's very always very happy to talk with it. Remember that everybody else there is usually just as shy as you are. So don't feel afraid just to walk up and start talking to people. And I think most people would be happy to chat and give SEO tips and nuggets and whatnot.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
and it's easy to break into these conversations because all you have to do is walk around and ask people, "Hey, what's the best nugget you've heard so far at the conference?" And let people talk about what they like. So it's super easy. And always remember that the best secrets get shared at the bar. The off the record stuff that happens at these events, that's where the action's at. The presentations are killer, but the stuff they don't want the public to know is talked about at the bar. So
yeah.
yeah,
I was going
go
to say,
ahead.
and I just point out, Charles talked to a bunch of people at spring training last year. One thing led to another, and now he's, got all the fame and fortune that comes with being a co-host on SEO Fight Club. So dreams do come true.
Lee, I'm doubling your Fight Club salary.
Bonus, baby.
So I've got a promotion. I'm now co-host. I thought I was assistant host.
Assistant to the co-host.
That's what I said. Isn't that the same thing?
There we go. And our ratings just took a hit, gentlemen.
All right, and SEO at the beach is coming in early March. So I just was very generously given an invite to speak at it, and I very respectfully had to decline because I'm taking this year off to run SEO testing. So I won't be at events until the 1 year anniversary, which will be rock stars at the end of Q4. So that'll be my entry back into speaking events. But these events, I mean, they're killer with or without me, honestly. And SEO at the beach in early March, if you prefer Florida, another great event. That's Mike Merlino and Brock Meisner, and those guys, if you haven't seen them, man, they are animated and they drop bombs. I mean, Brock is so tactical. Like, it's crazy watching him present, because the whole audience is just rapid fire photographing his slides while he's talking. And with Mike Merlino, he's so animated. He's clearly a fan favorite in the SEO industry, and his tactics for local, especially in expanding proximity, I mean, they're pretty cool. So it's really fun to see the tests he does. So always a good time on that. All right, let me kill this to some discussion. Let me pull up Skype, because I think there were a few questions sent to us in Skype this morning. So people are wondering if Cora questions are off limits. They're not off limits, but we don't want to make it the Cora show. So I might limit the number of questions, not whether or not they can be Cora related. Here's one situation: starting websites for smaller companies, smaller budgets that haven't done SEO. Let's say tech stuff is in order, schema is applied, and load time is great. So determine some commercial terms for the sales pages with low competition. What are your ideas for the absolute shortest route to rank them, long pagers? Um, well, this becomes a minimum viable SEO problem, right? So you kind of have these one-page websites with a very target keyword, or you have a website with one keyword per pages and just a handful of them. And each one of them I would treat like a microcosm unto itself for minimum viable SEO. So I would deal one page, one keyword at a time. And the recipe I've been sharing for a year now, and I've seen people, really run with it and take it to heart. The recipe is: I get a exact match domain if I can, partial match if I can't, deal with it if you can't do either of those. That's like a 10% advantage piece of it if you can get the exact match. But 10% doesn't ruin the game. It just means you have to try harder elsewhere. And then I will send out a press release before I even set up hosting. And the only reason I'm doing it before I set up hosting is I want to get the clock started, because that takes 3 weeks at its best. And then I will create one page of content typically, and I will Cora tune it phases 1 through 4. If you don't have Cora, it's not required, but I recommend you get data about your factor deficits. So if you have a preferred tool, get the data on how you're short for the keyword, and do the on-page stuff, especially about relevancy and entities and keyword density. Those things need to be in place. Think about your factor diversity, and your off page is already done. So hopefully you have enough with the press release. If you're still short, one press release will get about 500 referring domains. If you need 800, you might need to do 2 press releases through different providers. Same provider, same referring domains. So just remember that you have to potentially go through different providers if you need more than one. And then typically, if it's a lower competition keyword, that alone will often get me into page one, and a certain amount of the time, even number one on page one. Just like I'll start there. Doesn't work with all keywords. Obviously, the degree of difficulty matters, but that's kind of the recipe I use when I do the parlor trick at conferences and I show up with a #1 ranking I made in 3 weeks. That's how I do that parlor trick. And so I would kind of do that recipe on a small website. And that's kind of my fastest, cheapest way to do it. And obviously, minimum viable SEO, here's the warning, is not strong SEO. So you need to do way more than the minimum if you plan to keep that ranking. The minimum is easily overthrown. What do you think, Lee?
I think the question is almost impossible to answer, and sort of here's why. Any page or any website that you're looking at comes in conditions from almost there to absolutely horrible, and there's different amount of work to be done on each one of them. But on a limited budget, which is kind of the basis of the question, you have to determine, how much work, how many hours worth of work you can get done within that, that budgetary constraint. And then you would have to go and take a look at Cora, and you would almost have to know at a factor level, I can implement this factor in 5 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, and, sort of translate that into, how much push each factor is going to give. So, the great answer to this is if we knew all of those things, it's a simple mathematical equation, but we don't. So you have to use your judgment and say, okay, given what I see, I would start with the high value zones. I would look at, your title, your meta, your content length to see if it's competitive. And I would also just take a quick look at the number of referring domains to your page. If your internal linking is not bringing much and your external linking is bringing 0, I might start there, because sometimes, a press release, for example, on a modest page can still move the needle quite nicely and get you some results for your client quickly. So I don't think there's any easy answer to that other than, you're going to have to take a look at the budget and the time and look at the work to be done and pick what you think is going to get the most benefit for them quickly.
Now, to, I guess, refute one part of that,
Come at me.
there are emerging techniques that can make short work of big deficit numbers.
Mhm.
And so what we've been finding in the supplemental content strategies is oftentimes when you're short, 2,000 words and 700 LSI and 250 entities, and you're short 120 variations, and you're short 75 exact matches. Like, those big numbers could be 3 accordions at the bottom of the page, and with certain tools, that can be a 10-minute problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think one part of that answer isn't as hard as it used to be, say, last year. Even like things have definitely changed in a hurry.
No, but you're making, you're fitting into, and I agree with you. You're fitting into one box. It's like, okay, so we don't have quite enough content. That's a quick one to fix, especially the method that you're talking about. But you could also have the content is off topic. So it's not a supplemental, it's a rewrite, or all of these, there's a spectrum of different things. So there's not a one size fits all, kind of answer to that one.
And that is correct. That's the winning answer right there. What do you think, Charles?
So we often find, so with enterprise sites, I typically find, Lee's kind of point of, there's, what are the high impact, what's the cost ratio? Because not only do we have to determine what's worth doing, we also have to determine what pages are worth optimized. Like, I've got pages I would love to see optimized and ranked better, but I know that we could make them #1. They're not going to move the needle for the business. It's just not worth it. It's as much as I'd like to spend, months doing it, it just won't do it for us. The benefit we have, though, is we can often put the minimum viable SEO onto a page without a lot of work. So I can implement, let's just say, schema. And I can implement it across thousands and thousands of pages, with a kind of a click of a button. Well, not a single click of a button, but with a simple ticket, and the dev team does what it needs to do. And then if I need to update, if I need to make it better, I could do it relatively quickly. What I can't do is I can't say, well, this page, we're going to customize this page a little bit. We're going to cut. I can't do that kind of stuff. So I have to find that thing that works every place and hope that's enough to get us past our competitors.
Yeah, enterprise SEO is a different beast in that regard. And yeah, I totally agree with that.
But I think Charles brings back, it goes back to there's a checklist of stuff. You talk about even with your I want to get an exact match domain because it helps. If I can't get that, I'll get a partial because it helps. Title of the page, the anchor text coming to it, the supplemental content if necessary. What are the pieces that are missing? And because there's so many different moving parts here, it's just almost we have a checklist of here are certain zones, and let's just make sure that crap is optimized the best that it can, because that'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for the least amount of work.
And Charles brought up a very important point. Like, he went past it pretty quickly, so I want to repeat it because it was a very good point. SEO starts with your targeting. Because if you're tuning for the wrong keyword, all the SEO is wrong by extension. And so, step one in any SEO is this the right keyword? Are there customers that will buy here? Is there search volume here? Is it achievable? Like, there's a sweet Goldilocks zone within which a keyword is viable for a business. If it's too optimistic, you're never gonna win it. You'll never see traffic. It's too hard to get those. If it's too long tail, sure, you can win it, but nobody searches it, so you'll never see traffic. So you gotta get the targeting for everything to be just right. And how many times do people have like a category named bestsellers? You know how many stores compete for bestsellers? And it's a crap keyword. The targeting is awful on it. It's impossible to win. Horrible keyword. But if you change bestsellers to best amethyst jewelry, boom, now you got a keyword that has some volume, or just best jewelry, do
Yeah,
something, or popular jewelry, so targeting is really what you need to look at. Like, simple names of things SEO, man, that's the most affordable SEO to do. Convert that gifts and delights category into a unique gift ideas category. Now you're getting traffic. But people don't start with targeting, and that's step one.
I can't agree enough with you on that one, Ted, because I've got lots of great examples. I mean, I'm sure lots of folks have, either stakeholders or clients that'll come to them with one of two things: either that top level term that everybody in the world wants to rank for, or something so long tail that, yeah, you could rank for it easy, but it's not going to get you anyplace. Um, and when I did e-commerce years ago, we ranked top three for the term Halloween. We were a Halloween costumes company. Top three for the term Halloween. And CEO was ecstatic and was congratulating me how intelligent I was. And the director of marketing says, yeah, but we didn't get any purchases. Like, nobody, everyone who was searching for Halloween and came to that, our conversion rate was horrible.
Yep.
And then that's another problem. Like, okay, what do you do? Do you stop optimizing, or do you try to capture that traffic somehow? Do you try to get them on some kind of newsletter, or just retarget them? Um, yeah, there's so much when it comes to understanding the value of different keywords. Some keywords will drive top of the funnel traffic, some will drive mid funnel traffic, and some will drive lower funnel. It's something I always explain to everybody, like, this is still marketing, but just with search engines. It's still the same concepts of marketing apply.
Yep. All right, let's see here. check. We'll get one more from Skype and then we'll get the YouTube questions. All right. So any preference, question mark, drip feeding changes suggested by Cora versus doing all of them at once. Okay. So the thing about that is you can really do either. But there's a hazard. Uh, there's a couple hazards in there. So there's a lot of things to change on a page from a Cora report. So Cora gives you a long list of factors and tells you exactly how many units short your page is of each factor. That's what it is fundamentally. And if you change it all at once, you oftentimes will change so much of the page content that Google's response to your changes is, holy crap, you changed everything. And I'm not sure if the keywords you're ranking for are currently relevant because you literally changed everything. So what Google does is they strip you of all your rankings to reprocess everything and then to put you back where it's appropriate. And we call that Google Dance. And what it looks like is you change everything on your page beyond a threshold, and your ranking goes from number 4 all the way down to number 97. And it usually will stay there for a week or so. All right. And it's at that point that your SEO client is calling you on the phone, screaming at you, saying, "What the hell did you just do?" And that is a hard conversation. But meanwhile, when it's Lee and I triggering that, we don't have a client who's afraid in that. We start giving each other high fives. You know, it's party time when we trigger that because we know what's coming next. And that is, you usually go back to the same spot or higher when you're doing aggressive on-page SEO. So if you want your change it all and you just kind of eat the Google dance experience. If you want your safest SEO, you do small incremental amounts of change and you see how Google responds to small bites. And if you're doing agency SEO, one of those is financially better than the other because the doing slow, safe SEO leads to your best billings. So if you're doing client work, you probably want to do slow, safe SEO because it's longer engagements and it's less, intense busy time. What do you think, Lee?
I agree with everything you said, but I'm going to bring just another perspective, another consideration in there. And that is, as you said, we don't have clients. So for me, I prefer just to swallow the whole thing at once and, let it dance around for however long it's going to dance around and, get to where it needs to get to. But if I have a client, first thing is, how long is it going to take me to do everything? Because they may not have the budget for me to work on that, do that much SEO at once, or I may not have, I may want to distribute the time among multiple pages on their site. So they're getting, a little bit of incremental benefits across the board. You also have, while it's good for billing to keep it going for a long time, some clients need results in a hurry. So in which case you have to sort of do as much as you can on the major pages to get them, the results they want to see quickly, even though it's going to be bumpy along the way. So there's a lot of different factors that come into sort of balancing out the all or nothing, but fundamentally either of them will work.
Any thoughts, Charles?
Yeah, I was just thinking that often I end up drip feeding things only because I have a limited number of resources that can do things. And I have to do work on multiple, I have, a dozen domains. I have to do work on a little bit of everything. I can't have one domain not do anything for 3 months while other domains are doing well. That's going to make different stakeholders upset. So it's purely a political optics reason and not an SEO reason. If I had my druthers, I'd just wave my magic wand, do everything all at once and be done with it.
Yeah, I think people prefer to take their medicine in one go. But yeah, clients and employers, they tend to lose their mind when you Google dance. So no right or wrong to it. It's what can everyone tolerate. All right. So let's see. Let's switch over to YouTube because we got a good list here. Ted, can you talk about some of your tests you've been doing and any results of the tests? So, yeah, I started off with the dumbest test I could think to do, and that is to retest meta keywords. Because who's gonna do it? Like, if I don't do it, who on earth at this point is gonna test meta keywords? And so what I've found is that it is not a ranking factor. Um, and it does not appear to be harmful in the slightest. So it is totally benign to use. It is not harmful. There are still companies out there using it. And I think personally, I think the best reason to use it is to be organized in the SEO that you do. Because most of you are doing accidental SEO where you take all of your keywords out of Search Console and you put them in a rank tracker. And then whenever you see waves of red come through the keywords you're not actually tuning for, you go into a panic and scramble. That's accidental SEO. So many SEOs do that. Huge waste of time. Now, when you do intentional SEO, you identify the best target keyword for every page and you make sure that page is optimally tuned for it. And those targets you need to keep track of. You don't want to go hunting to a spreadsheet or a file share somewhere to find out what is the target for this page. So you put the target in the meta keywords, and now you're organized, and people can have discussions about the targeting if they disagree. You got it right there, and you know what the measurement standard is going to be for a page because you've already defined what the target is in the page. And so getting organized with your SEO, that is a great thing to do. So I actually like meta keywords, even though I acknowledge it does not rank your page at this time. Lee?
I will offer a rebuttal, sir, because this is Fight Club.
Okay.
I love it when SEOs put their meta keywords in there because it shortcuts my research time into what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish. It makes keyword research easier. It makes me also understand, because I can look at that list of keywords and say, do you actually rank for these keywords that you're trying to rank for? And it tells me about the quality of the SEO of your page. Should I mimic you or not? Or should I just ignore the SEO that's coming out of your page? So, it is a way of signaling to your competitors who will view the page source. And there's not many of them. Surprisingly, most SEOs that I know of don't look at the damn page source, of their competitors' pages. But I will. And so if I see stuff like that in there, thank you for the clues.
Well, to rebuttal the rebuttal, if I
Go
can't
for
tell if I can't tell what you're tuned for at a glance, you're not ranking.
it.
So it's not like it's a secret if you don't put it there. It needs to be the most obvious thing about your page. So it's a no harm thing to do.
All right, counterpunch, sir, because we are going at this one. A lot of times, how many times do you see just, one or two meta keywords there? Usually what you'll see is a long list, because I want to rank this page for, these 27 or this 127 keywords. So it still tells me a little bit about the quality of the SEO without having to, run a crap ton of reports to figure it out diagnostically.
I mean, I suppose if somebody puts a list in, you're like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. This is gonna be easy.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but to also refute that, at least on my sites, do you know if the meta keywords you're seeing is the meta keywords I'm using?
I was also going to offer that as a refutation of my own argument, because I know some people that will use decoy SEO, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
All right, great question. Lee, do you have any tests cooking currently?
I have a number of them. I've gotten back in. Now, some of them are going to take, weeks and months to, some of them are link building, some of them are other things. Like I have one that's going to take me about 6 months to get all the way through it. But I've launched a few things there. Some of them I will bring out as Fight Club episodes if they, whichever way they go, especially if they go well, we'll bring those out. Many of them will just go into my mastermind. So if you're not in there, sorry. I also noted, just for the purposes of continuing that previous conversation, that Charles, aka Switzerland over there, did not take sides or offer a third. So I want to see if Charles has anything to say about meta keywords.
Sometimes meta keywords have absolutely nothing to do with SEO. I've worked at companies, large companies, who use meta keywords for their internal search. And I can't tell you how many times I had agencies come to me and say, oh, you should get rid of your meta keywords because they don't do anything. And I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with SEO. We use it for internal search. And we don't even use it well for internal search. Often we'll put things in there to try to make a page rank or not rank in our internal search, because we're basically trying to monkey with our own internal search. So yeah, don't always assume that the meta keywords is because of SEO. It could be some other reason.
That's a great point.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see. Uh, let's see. Berkman is saying, I have web pages already ranking. In the last 2 weeks, I've changed the content substantially. And submitting it for indexing and Google Search Console, but there is no change to the impressions and clicks after 2 weeks. It's like the index tool didn't do anything at all. Any ideas? Well, for starters, requesting indexing is a completely separate application from the stats you see in Google Search Console. They're two unrelated things. You request indexing, it goes into a queue, it goes out to a gigantic cluster of Google bots. So that's way off to left field. All right. So when you go and look at your stats, Google set up those Search Console stats to be diagnostic. And so what they're doing is they're saying, let's take a small number of their high quality data, a small number of their average data, and a small quantity of their low quality data so that they get a little diagnostic sampling of what's happening on their site. And when you go keyword by keyword down the things you currently rank for, even page one on Google, a lot of those won't even appear in Search Console data. And so you have to understand there are massive sampling problems to Search Console data. And I know people have these techniques of, rapid sampling and downloading, and you can get the idea there. But trying to turn Search Console into a rank tracker that's reliable is a lot of work and probably not going to end well. So just know it's a diagnostic tool. It is not a free rank tracker. Lee, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've seen for, I don't know, the past month or so, that on-page changes have been sluggish in terms of their product. I mean, historically, you're looking at 1 to 3 days, and you've got the signal you need. Either it worked or it didn't work. It moves up, down, or whatever. But across the board, it's been somewhat sluggish. I know that for those that follow Carolyn Holzman's crawl or no crawl, she's gone into some theories about that, which I won't go into here. But there looks like there may be some issues with the Google bots. right now. That's one possible explanation. So I'm not sure what the hell is going on. But we are noticing, sort of that sluggish thing. So just because it hasn't reacted in 2 weeks is not necessarily an indicator of anything at this point.
And who knows if the keyword you tuned for is even in the sample set that gets included in Search Console. You would actually have to verify the Search Console data with another rank tracker. So I would recommend just going to another rank tracker because it'll probably be a better tool to use long term. Charles, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. So yes, in agreement with Lee a lot. Google's messing around with stuff right now. I'm actually running some tests. One of my tests has to do with knowledge panel, and I noticed that knowledge panels have reverted in the past maybe a week to what they were several weeks ago. So that tells me Google suggests to me that Google rolled back a database and is waiting to roll forward either update the database or roll it back out. I know there's a new bot floating around out there. Actually, Carol and I were just talking about that. I've looked on my servers and the bot's not hitting us as much as it should be hitting us. So there is definitely weirdness going on. I would not panic about making changes and not seeing an increase. As long as you didn't see it get hurt at all, I wouldn't worry about it. Just sit on it for a couple weeks and move on to work on something else.
Yep, 9 times out of 10, the right thing to do is wait. It's hard to do it, but that's usually the right thing because if you react too quickly and Google rolls back, boy, did you just mess things up. All right, let's see. First link priority. Does Google consider a link to a page and a link to the same page with a jump link to a section on the page as duplicates? They give examples of www.domain/page and www.domain/page and a anchor to section. I think there's a function on most URL classes. So in computer programming, you get an object for a URL, and on that object there are methods and variables. And so the variables, have specific data, and the methods do things with that specific data. One of the methods is going to be some sort of canonicalizer or a same as, where you can take two different URLs and say, hey, are these actually the same document? And so a canonicalizing method would actually determine that those two are in fact the same page. All right. So at a computer science level, Google will handle that as the same page. Now, on an indexing level, on what they do in their database, they do have that whole passage indexing where they kind of break up large documents into smaller documents. It could be that Google would treat those as different URLs with the advent of passage indexing. But we don't know. We don't have their source code. So the question I would ask is, do you see the anchor, the hash section, appear in search results? Because if you never see that specifically in a search result, I would argue it's getting lost in canonicalization. What do you think, Lee?
I agree with you in terms of the jump links getting canonicalized, but in terms of how Google handles that, in terms of link equity or power, or does it count or not count? Does it count if it's on the same page, or it's a jump link to a section on a different page? I have no tested data on that, although I've heard just a multitude of theories about what Google is or might be doing. So sorry, I can't be any help on that one.
Yeah, there's not a lot of recent research I've seen on that topic. So if somebody wants to test jump links and how Google treats them in search, that would be a great test to run. Charles, any thoughts on this?
Sorry, I was multitasking. I was going into my logs looking at the Google bots.
Oh,
And
the question is a URL to a page and a URL with an anchor jump to it. So two URLs, one is just to the page, one is to a part of the page. Does Google treat those URLs as the same URL?
I do not know. I've never tested. I've heard folks say that they're treated differently, but I've never tested it or nor seen it actually work. So no
Yeah,
comment.
I do think that table of contents links appear in the site links below. Like I've seen those treatments. So do know that Google does handle those in a specific way, but in terms of the primary search result itself, I don't recall ever seeing one as the search result URL. So other than special treatments and data about a search result, I haven't seen anything. Are you aware of the avalanche SEO technique? Um, I think isn't that the technique that Kyle's been talking about this past year? Is that avalanche
No,
SEO?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it either. Um, you know, I'd say ultimately, as SEOs, we need to experiment and prove what works for ourselves. So if you can prove a particular technique works, then it's really hard to unseat things that work. And so I would not throw away anything that you have demonstrated works reliably for you. Those are good tools for your toolbox. I think it's important that you actually test things. So, what we tend to see for on-page tuning is you ought to be able to move the needle most of the year in about 48 hours time. So if you modify a page, you ought to see at least a slight bump in ranking improvement a few days after. Now, when it's off-page SEO, it always takes a month. But on-page SEO for a website that's in good standing with Google and is functioning properly and optimally, it's very fast turnaround. So you should, test these things on fast turnarounds and see if they move the needle for you. What do you think, Lee?
I agree with you 100%.
Uh, Charles?
Yeah, I always thought avalanche theory was interesting. Just for everyone who's listening, it's the idea of you go after a lower term keyword, then you're basically going up
Yeah.
higher. But you're doing a calculation based on how much traffic you're already getting, so it's a little more complicated to it. One of the things I've always wondered that is, it may work, may not work. I haven't done it myself. I always wonder, are you really when you get results, whether it's positive or negative, is it because of what you're doing, or is there a secondary factor that's causing it to happen? Maybe avalanche theory, it's creating some other kind of folks are linking to you, so it's building up your authority, and that's why you're ranking for these better terms later. I'm not saying it doesn't work. If Kyle says it works, I believe him. I haven't tested it. I always wonder with any of these techniques, like what exactly is doing it? Is it this technique, or is this technique causing something else to happen? So,
Yeah, and I have a problem with it in that a lot of the times I'll go for the gold on big keywords and I'll win them. So if I can get the goal without going for lesser things first, why would I do that? And so, as part of minimum viable SEO, I'm not sure it's a requirement for minimum viable SEO, but propping yourself up with pages on lots of lesser terms probably makes for better maximum SEO. So, there could be an argument that the technique ultimately results in stronger SEO because you have so many more bases of, relevancy covered on the website. But I don't know that it's a requirement necessarily to rank for keywords. All right, next question. How do you trigger aggregate rating stars? Really, you just put the aggregate rating schema on the page, and there's a requirement on Google's side that you actually display the ratings and reviews on that page. So you have to meet that requirement to pass manual review for it. So if it's all honest, Google will potentially do that to some of your pages, not all of them. So keep that in mind. I know that some online retailers get the ultimate blessing, and nearly all of their pages that seem to show the stars. I guarantee it's not all of their pages, but it might be most for those retailers. And the reason they've gotten there is they've had it for a long time. They have lots of reviews. The review data has been honest and genuine, and they just, they're in the trust bucket of that particular subsystem. And so I would say always put that data on your page, and hopefully in time you get into Google's trust bucket and you get the same treatment. I recommend that if you're just starting out with it, find somebody who's in the trust bucket, look at how they did it, do it the same way. That's probably the easiest way to go about doing it, right? And then beyond that, you're kind of at Google's mercy to let you in. Lee, your thoughts?
You know, I don't like that term trust bucket. It explains stuff, but it's not prescriptive. So, I go back to something Charles was saying earlier about, if I see this, I'm wondering what's the secondary thing that's causing it, and why is it that on a larger website like you're talking about, it's most of the products, but not all the products? What is it about those particular pages? Because there's clearly some rules at play here. And if you can discover the rules, you can replicate it on your own site. Because it's not just the large sites that get those. There are some smaller sites out there that will get those particular things. So, I go more for the let's get there. So if it is trust, what constitutes trust? Is it traffic? Is it longevity? Is it, what is it? Because that's the key to, making it repeatable.
Well, Lee, you just took a dump in the trust bucket.
Not the first time I've done that. So.
Yeah, no, there's definitely rules at play. I'm sure there's a Google page on it somewhere that spells out the requirements. But just from my anecdotal personal experience, even if you do everything 100%, it doesn't guarantee you get the stars.
Yeah.
And so there's more to it that we don't know, and it seems to be some type of trust signal on Google's side, and we don't know exactly how to win it every time. But just experiment with it. Copy a working implementation and experiment with it, and read the documentation, and see if somebody in a forum somewhere can mention something that you haven't heard about it, and maybe that's the clue. But yeah, we don't know everything on it. Charles, do you ever go after rating stars?
Not ratings, but one of the things I've learned, and this goes to any of the features that Google will put on the search results that come out of or seem to come out of schema, is be very, very careful of what you put into the schema fields. Just having it does not mean, so for example, with the stars, just having your product schema doesn't necessarily mean Google's going to use it. You could have some data in one of the fields that Google doesn't like. And if Google doesn't like something, it won't know what to do and just won't simply do it. I've learned that Google has some cheats about what they look at. And if you do certain fields incorrectly or in a manner that Google doesn't like or can't understand, it will just drop you from the contention. And then once you fix that problem, you suddenly come racing back. So like Lee's example, like, oh, some products have it, some products don't. The first thing I would look at is what's between the schema? What's the difference between the schema from the ones that do and the ones that don't? It could be as simple as, oh, you have a bad character in a name field or a description field, and just Google doesn't like it. It wasn't necessarily not necessarily a bad character, a quote or a single quote. Google, for whatever reason, doesn't like it and just knocks you out of contention.
Yeah, and I can tell you right off the bat, if all your reviews are 5 stars, Google's not going to give you stars. But what's so bizarre, if you only have one review and it's 5 stars, Google's going to be like, 5 stars, one vote. So go figure. Go figure. So 5 stars, one vote is probably the exploit if you want to exploit it. All right. So Emily says, oh, I skipped one. Sorry. Going back one to, I'm noticing some Google page indexing problems recently. Do indexing problems relate to page quality or is it random? Actually, indexing problems most commonly are an issue on Google's side. And next, most commonly, they're often a technical SEO issue in your website. Infinite crawls, poor page tuning, things of that nature. And when it's poor page tuning, oftentimes you are ranking for a keyword, just not the keyword you're after. And so you gotta tease out clues through Search Console and through diagnostic searches in Google to see, is Google aware of the content of your page. So can you search for an exact string on the page and find it? Because if you can, then it's indexed, it's just not ranking for the keyword you're hoping for, in which case you have a tuning problem. But if Google can't find your page, then Google might not know about the page because they're never getting outside of the socks category because of an infinite crawl on your website. That would be a technical SEO issue. You fix the infinite crawl, Google can crawl the whole site. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can go sideways there. It's usually not random. There is usually a legitimate problem either on your website or in Google itself. Thoughts?
Yeah, we just talked about that earlier. The concept of, Google's been sluggish ranking content lately, and then Charles said, "Hey, yeah, I just saw indications that Google rolled back 3 weeks." So, the person that had the question earlier about last 2 weeks, I haven't seen a whole lot. They may have started to see it and then faced a rollback. So, Google reverted back to a time period before the changes were made and has to reprocess, all the data from 3 weeks ago forward. None of that has to do with us and on our pages. That's just Google having issues, crawling and processing and making changes accurately to the SERPs. So, that's what we see most of the time. I absolutely hate the idea that Google's not indexing your page because of the quality of the content, because we know that Google can't read. We know that Lorem Ipsum pages rank. We know gibberish content pages rank and all those sort of things. It has nothing to do with the quality of the content. It is usually just something as simple as you forgot to pull the no index tag off of that, or you've got another little technical bug, or like Ted said, Google's just farting around right now and they don't have their act together. So sorry, you're just going to have to sit and wait until they get it together.
Yep. Emily asks, hey, Ted, I'm reaching out with your infinite SEO leads approach. So if you've seen me speak at some of the conferences last year, I talked about sources of infinite SEO leads. You can actually Google for them and find these businesses with easy problems to solve, and you can reach out to them with solutions to their easy problems. She's asking, how do you reach out to the stakeholder, whether it's the owner or, some mid-level person in the business, record an email or through LinkedIn or with a text. And for agency SEO, it's all about having standard operating procedures. So I think if you want to use a method like this as part of your general approach, I would document how the outreach emails are supposed to be created, because in this we are identifying websites with the problem. So you probably want to screenshot the problem for the client, and that way they see a screenshot of their own website, and not just their website. It's not a thumbnail. You are saying the problem is exactly right here. Here's a little bit of the source code of that underlying problem, and we need to solve it because it's doing X to your SEO. It's very specific information. Like, that is not something that gets spammed out there to everyone and one size fits all. This is a problem in your source code I specifically found, and I am able to help you fix this. And then, so once you figure out those details, you could probably have a VA, like, run the diagnostic queries and find businesses that have this problem. Then go to each one and get screenshot images of the problem. Then create HTML files of the HTML email to go out. And now you're just sending out a mailing list to those people. So I'd set up SOPs on it if you actually want to take it to scale. If you're a small independent, you could probably just do the work yourself, dedicate, 1 day every 2 weeks to outreach and just run through the paces. Lee, what do you think about outreach methodologies?
Well, I think there are multiple, because it depends on, what kind of data you can scrape. I know that particular method for you. Now we know the websites, but then we have to go get information. So how easy is it to scrape emails? How easy it is to scrape phone numbers? How easy is it to scrape addresses? Because you can call them, you can mail them. There's the old school methods are coming back. I mean, I was shocked back in October, early November, when I got a catalog in the mail from Amazon trying to get us, using some physical documents to get us, onto the web again. So it depends on what type of outreach. And the most important thing in any of this is if you send 100 emails, or you do 100 phone calls, or you send, 100 letters, postcards, whatever it happens to be, track it and make sure you're getting a reasonable return on it.
Charles, any thoughts on outreach? I don't imagine you do a lot of it.
I don't do a lot of it, but I get a lot of it. And my number one killer for bad outreach would be making yourself generic, and that use the same thing you send out to a million people. If it even looks like, so I would just say right off the bat, email, don't even bother emailing somebody. I like LinkedIn. The best outreach I ever got from somebody, he made a video, and a video with him in it. And I even reached out to him and said, look, I'm not interested, but I think what you did was really, really smart, and I would keep doing it. And if there's something I can do to help you out other than becoming your customer, I'm happy to do it. Like it immediately built a relationship.
Yeah,
That'll obviously take longer though.
a video explainer of the problem might be your best sales tool. That's a great idea.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Hi, Ted. Had a call, now tuning in. See, my question is answered. Oh, okay. All right. Does the verification of Google Search Console for multiple PBN sites using the same account leave a footprint? Well, sure, but does the footprint do anything? I mean, so if you're doing really bad activity, like if you're misleading searchers, then just know the ban hammer will catch everything your account has ever touched. But if what you're doing falls within the realm of normal internet activity and free speech, like, what is it you're afraid of? So, simply owning low quality blogs is not a crime. All right. It's protected speech, actually. Google doesn't have to rank it, but you're allowed to do it. It's lawful. So, just keep in mind what Google doesn't want is Google doesn't want you to lie to searchers. Google doesn't want you to rank a page for how to train a puppy and say, come gamble at my online casino. And that's if you're doing that, then expect trouble. If you're breaking laws, if you have a software piracy website, plan on your properties becoming scorched earth. But if all you have is a number of blogs that arguably aren't the best blogs on earth, that's not a crime. So I would have very little fear about my online ventures failing to start up. And I would wager that every SEO in the room has a handful of blogs that don't perform. And in fact, I even know someone who teaches people to make a blog that doesn't perform as part of his training. And man, is that a cool trick. Lee, what are your thoughts on blogs that don't perform?
I think they have use. Like I go back, I have a lot of them, and they're great for going and testing, ideas like, does this link strategy work, or does this tuning strategy work, or does this AI software write better than that one, or whatever it is. If you have those things that aren't performing well, you can revise pages or put up new pages, and they're awesome for your ability to go into the field and get results for yourself. I think the footprint question is an interesting one. We've seen in recent years, Google has moved away from the punitive stuff more to just ignoring stuff. So, the question is, for me, if you have, for example, a PBN, how hard would it be to put it back up? Is it worth protecting? Is it the driving force behind 10K a month in income or 100K a month in income? Or is it, it's got a few links to a few sites that generate almost nothing. So Google tends to go after, if they go after stuff, big widespread stuff, but they're not catching that stuff algorithmically, or at least they're not acting on it. So I'm less afraid of those sort of footprints. Now, when I do some things that I think that Google might not like, I will put those on, different domains, keep them arm's length or further from, my money sites or sites that I care about. But generally speaking, that's rare when that happens. But if I do it, I know I'm going in to do bad things that Google's not going to like a lot.
Any thoughts, Charles?
Yeah, I was getting deja vu talking about this. We actually talked about this last week. I would refer people back to last week and listen to anything Kyle Rufus talked about from his rhinoplasty Plano. After he was outed, Google dropped a hammer on him, and it was very interesting what Google went after and what they could see when they theoretically shouldn't have been able to see stuff. So I would hunt down any talks he's given on that, listen to those, because if Google really wants to find you, they can find you. And to Lee and Ted's points, if you're not doing anything like illegal or anything really, really, really bad, I wouldn't worry too much about it. They've got bigger fish. They've probably got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, they haven't done anything about the .it network in years, so
I
Yeah,
pointed things out to Google reps. I have pointed out problems to Google reps. They didn't really take much action on it. So
all right. How do you do your keyword mapping? Do you start with the page or do you export keywords and map from there? My recommended approach, I call it intentional SEO, is you get the master list of canonical URLs for your website. You should know how many support pages you have. You should know how many category pages you have. You should know how many product pages you have, and you should know how many blog pages you have. You should have total awareness of what pages exist. And right there, I already know that 80% of SEOs haven't even checked. So start with the canonical list of canonical URLs. All right. And then from there, you go URL by URL and you identify the best target keyword for each one. And then you tune them. And that is intentional SEO. And when you do that, you have the list of keywords you're rank tracking. You have the list of URLs you're hoping to see rank. And if you don't, then you know you're not ranking. Or if you see a different URL ranking for it, you know you're cannibalized. And all of your diagnostics, all of your awareness of situation comes from that intentional SEO list. And honestly, I think probably 90% of SEOs have never made such a list. Because 90% of SEOs are out there practicing accidental SEO, where they load all of their keywords from Keyword Planner into a rank tracker. They spend all their time rank tracking, and then they lose their mind when they go red on keywords they're not actually tuning for or targeting. And so hopefully people start doing intentional SEO because it's faster, cheaper, better than doing accidental SEO. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like that approach. I think the the thing is you have to consider I think you can use Search Console data to kind of see where you are and evaluate what Google thinks the page is about, and then use that as a starting point for that. But sometimes you'll find that what the page is about is a bunch of damn long tails that don't really move the needle, and you don't really care about. So then the question is, do we tune that page or build a new one around the target keyword they're going after? Because clearly that one's not getting it done. But fundamentally, yeah, it's one page, one primary keyword, which will lead you to a family of related keywords. And I like the idea of calling your shot, so to speak, just saying, this is the page, this is the keyword I'm going to go for, and I'm going to keep working at it.
Charles, any thoughts?
Charles doesn't have to SEO for keywords. He's an enterprise guy. He just throws up
Yeah.
content, ranks.
Isn't that what you just throw a page on your website and it ranks like page one? Maybe throw a link to it. Get to number one. That's all you gotta do. I'm sorry. Was there more to that? I must have missed something.
Damn enterprise guys.
All right. Let's see. Does Cora work for languages other than English? Yes, but some languages better than others. So if you have a left to right language, odds are it's gonna work fine. There are some potential encoding issues that I'm constantly battling. Because as you know, the web is a wild west of content encoding errors. So people claim encodings they don't have, people don't specify their encodings, people copy paste out of Word docs and it changes the encodings. And so as best as the world seems to try in getting special characters right on web pages, it it often doesn't work the way we hope, and that translates into tools outputs. So, if you're wondering, can I search in native Japanese in Cora? Yes, you can. Will the keywords come back in Japanese? Yes, they often do, sometimes mixed with English as well. The reports and the software are only in English, and I can only support it in English. But if you want to reach out to me on my contact page for schedule a meeting to discuss, I'd be happy to show it to you in a Skype call. All right. I assume there's no comments on language support.
Is Cora still out there? I'm just at a
It's not quite dead yet.
all right.
No, it's going, it's alive and well.
Yeah, I've had to do some run it for friends. I've run some core reports in foreign languages, and I'm like, okay, so which country code? Which it's interesting, especially when I get the core report back and it's in a language that I don't speak. I have no way of evaluating, things like is the LSI on point or the entity's good. I got nothing, but it does support other languages. I have used it, to do some of that stuff.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Can we distill the concept of helpful content into measurable metrics? No, because Google has never itemized what's in that update. I think naming an update like that usually isn't helpful because people assume what it does, and that's a big problem. And so, because of that, no two SEOs agree on what helpful content update even does. So we can't break it down. Like I have a theory, but my theory doesn't match anybody else's theory. And so really we need to think less about named Google updates because they're poorly defined.
Mhm.
And we would be far better off at actually looking for observable behaviors and features that we can measure and naming those ourselves and understanding them ourselves. Because then we develop a language for things we can see and measure, and we can discuss those things and how they work and what we do to leverage them. But the helpful content update, it's a vacuous nebula of, probably misleading spin. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, this is one of those things where there's 10,000 theories and zero data whatsoever. And even people that come with data say, "Oh well, we have this theory about helpful content and we went to this site, it was clearly hit with the helpful content update and we did these things and it recovered, therefore we're right." And I'm like, "Okay, but we've got these other sites over here that meet all of your criteria and they can go do the same process on and it doesn't work." So, there's these incomplete theories or just a fitting of the facts that agree with me to my theory as opposed to an actual analysis or an actual repeatable process that says, okay, helpful content is about this. So if we add these things to our website or make sure these things aren't missing, our rankings increase predictably. And since that's not out there, I'm not sure that the helpful content thing is even there. I've seen no data that suggests, that it's there. And I've seen no data that suggests when people say my site was hit with the helpful content update, that's even true.
Yep. And to kind of put a real example on it, around the time that the helpful content update came out, one of my websites took a hit. And my first inclination was to think, oh no, I was hit by the update. My content might not be helpful. And turns out that that wasn't true at all. It was coincidence because Google always has an update. So whenever you take a hit, it's always around the time of an update. So it's nonstop coincidence. And really what happened is I had link decay on a press release, got a new press release and zoom back to the top. Um and so yeah, we're quick to label things without information. But also at the same time helpful content update came out, I noticed a new presentation that I could observe with my eyes in the search results. And what that was Google was going to pages and was parsing out ingredient lists and pros and cons and lists of common problems.
Mhm.
And this information is getting an actual presentation in search results. And it wasn't schema. They parsed the content of the page, picked out that information, and presented it in a search result. There is a Google subsystem doing that. So my theory Helpful content is looking for and parsing and quantifying elements of helpful content. Can I prove it? No. And the helpful content update might be about backlinks. I don't know. And the subsystem I'm seeing, that might be the JL69QR update. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And
Google.
some of those elements that you have observed have come and gone. Some are still around, some have come and gone. And
Yeah,
you see them coming in and out at different times.
and so do I know which features map to which updates? No, because Google doesn't map those. So we have the named update from the Google side is just a buzzword, usually with some sort of, slant to what Google is hoping to manipulate. And so when they called it the helpful content update, they're trying to say write better content. That's what it is. It's a talking point. I wish I had a better answer than that, but Google doesn't share what's in their updates. All right, let's see. And also, bounce rate. People are so critical of bounce rate. The Daily Dilbert ranks #1 for Daily Dilbert, gets a ton of search volume and has nearly perfect bounce back to search. Because once you see your Daily Dilbert, you're not going to dwell. You leave. So clearly, bounce rate isn't bad for the Daily Dilbert. So why do we assume bounce rate is always bad? I think it's more descriptive about the type of content, right? And the type of content isn't inherently bad. So yeah, don't panic too much on bounce rate. It's not always a bad thing. Um, but oftentimes we don't want bounce because we want you to browse the store. But if you're doing lead gen, your bounce rate's through the roof, but your lead gen can be highly effective. Lead gen is all about one pagers that capture the contact info. Then what do? They usually bounce back to search. Is lead gen bad? I mean, it works. People do it. I don't know. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, this is one of those things where, again, it's something we like to go to and say, oh, that explains why this page is better than that page, but it doesn't hold up across much. So, I'm not inclined to think a whole lot on bounce rate based on the data that's out there right now. I have sites that have, like you would be considered high bounce rates, and yet they perform very well, they rank well, they do what they're supposed to do.
See, Boris says, I added a section about the company in order to increase conversions, and I dropped from position 4 to 35. It's just 200 words. Oh, my top chat just jumped and I lost the question. Oh, it's just 200 words and I made it relevant for the page. What do you think about that? Well, if you think the content messed up the topical relevancy of the page, put it in an image as a test. So get the text off the page because Google takes months to OCR images. So you can put that information in a graphic and then it's not in the text to mess up your topical relevancy. So I would run an experiment, put the image you're using for or put the text in an image you're using for conversion and see if you don't revert back to 4. The other way to do the test is just undo it. Do you bounce back?
Mhm.
And if you don't bounce back after removing it, then I would hypothesize then maybe there's another different problem you haven't identified yet. Thoughts?
I like that the second one better, because if there is another problem, having an image creates another variable in here. So, if it is the content, and you bounce back, then you can put the content back in an image. But I think the original premise was the content was put there to help with some aspect of SEO, and clearly it didn't do that. So I would just leave it off then.
You could try an aside tag. I've never used one, but supposedly they should work.
All right. Questions with the changing landscape in Google. Should we be thinking one, SEO on Google, two, SEO on Bing, three, SEO on DuckDuckGo, four, SEO on Meta, five, SEO on Pinterest, six, so on. I think there's advantages to doing Bing first because Bing is really strict and it's easy to rank in. And so if you rank on Bing first, you kind of get a lot of diagnostic value about ranking well on Google. But it's one of those things, it's not a requirement or anything. Usually the opportunity is largely on Google because they have the search volume. And so, I would be worried about squandering the opportunity initially because if you make problems in Google, Google can drag those out for weeks and months. So you want to kind of have your ducks in a row, your duck goes in a row. I don't know that I would actually optimize for DuckDuckGo. I like it as a search engine, but it's done next to nothing for me organically. So I
Yeah.
think their market share is just way too small.
Well,
Uh,
Bing, Yahoo, and DuckDuckGo are the same. They operate off the same. They're all fed by the Bing search engine. So if you optimize for Bing, you are optimizing for DuckDuckGo and Yahoo largely, minus the personalized search aspects of each one of those. So they're the same. I think the interesting thing about this question is it's more about diversification, just diversification across search engines, but also platforms. Meta's not really a search engine. Pinterest is not really a search engine. But I would say yes, if you can drive traffic through multiple channels, then I would do that. It just protects you because if Google has an update or just a bug that impacts your site, it doesn't take you down with your other channels.
yeah, and that's smart. If you're neglecting channel marketing, you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table. And if SEO is 60% or more of your gross revenue, you're probably over invested in one channel, and Google could disrupt your revenue in a heartbeat. So diversify if you don't want Google to have the keys to turn you off.
Yeah. So
Um,
what was it? Oh, is it Charles? Earlier this year, didn't Google have a problem with that affected large news organizations like yours? How much traffic are we talking about that a bug?
Yes, that bug, and I say bug because it's Google, if you're listening, I don't believe it was a bug. Um, it was, oh, I had an exact number. It was like 10 or 15% of our traffic, which is millions. That's like a lot. Um, there was just a bug a week or two ago where sites stopped ranking on the weekends for whatever reason. Google has bugs all the time. Google recently gave less visibility to YouTube on Discover. Was that a bug? Was that on purpose? Google's not talking. I'm not expecting them to say anything, but these are great examples where Google makes changes. And if all of your business is around Google and ranking in Google, that's a potential problem. I'm not saying you don't want to rank. I'm just saying look at it as the top of the funnel. And when you get those customers to your website, capture those customers as well as you can. You think Amazon was relying on Google search, people coming in from Google constantly? Yeah, they get lots of Google, but they want to get that customer and keep that customer, prime customer or whatever they do, but they want to capture that customer so that people are looking for them directly. that's the power of building a brand.
Emily asks, what can the Cora community do to support you in releasing 7.6? So if you're unaware, everybody's mad at me because the next version of Cora is not the latest stable version. We've had an open beta for a long time now, and why isn't Ted making it the latest stable version? The reason is there are types of development releases. Some are just flashy features that are cool and fun, and those tend to be really quick. And the Cora community is used to feature releases because they're, I can tease them and then I can release it, and it's like cool, it's fun, it's fast. We love Ted. He's so interactive and quick and engaging. And then there are stabilization builds. And let me tell you about stabilization builds. These are not flashy features. These are the underlying reliability of the product. And in order to do them correctly, I have to do all the bean counting. So I have to run reports and find out why is this measurement this way? And then I have to go look at a website and find out why did it measure that way? Then I have to go back into Cora and figure out how to tweak it to measure it better. And then I have to rerun the report and say, was the measurement better? And there's 125,000 possible factors. And on the bean counting of my open beta testers, one of them looked into accuracy of numbers. Everybody else treated it like privileged early access. And so I'm going through and I'm doing my best to make sure that the product is as accurate as it can be. I don't want to call it a latest stable build unless it's a latest stable build. And so I'm doing the hard part. It is a stabilization build, but when I'm done, I expect 7.6 to be the latest stable build for a long, long time to come. That's my hope. I want it to be like 7.2 was for a long, long time. It's the rock that everybody goes to. And that's not an easy flash in the pan feature release. And there are flash in the pan features in 7.6 and people want them, the indexing, the supplemental content tools. But the important part is that the numbers are better than everybody else's numbers. And that's the part that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do. So yeah, primarily be patient. And if you see an accuracy issue, odds are I probably already know about it, but feel free to share it, PM me. No reason to flood the Skype group with bug reports.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in on that one real quick because there was one of the ones when it looked like you were close. One of the times is when I jumped in and was, I did something simple. I'd run a report on 7.2, I'd run it on 7.5, and I would just compare the numbers, across the factors, and we, discovered that there were some counting issues across there. But to resolve them, I remember one day we spent all day on a Zoom call parsing out pages manually to count sentences to see where the code was breaking and trying to figure out, just for that. And that's just for a handful of factors, but those fixes were easy. And then now with the architecture of discovery, there's 100,000, factors that have gone into the database. Any new factor that rolls in that somebody says, hey, wait a minute, my page doesn't have 37 of these, it's got 152 of these, what's wrong? Well, that becomes a bug on a scale that is just, astronomical. So the rewrite to make sure that you're counting things correctly is not easy. Especially, we were dealing with one just the other day. We were looking at, if you're counting something in a div tag, well, div tags can be nested. So, you have to write code that can withstand nested factors. And then within nested factors, You can also have broken nesting,
Yep.
which breaks a lot of different things. So there is a lot of complexity. So I would look at this more as almost a rewrite than an update. Because there is just way more architecture that has to be done in this than, hey, can you add a factor that, counts, keywords, entities, and stuff like that in a new H7 zone that, that just got announced or something like that.
Yeah, and the actual bug list is pretty short. I'm down to like five or six known tickets. So, I constantly feel like we're close, but I some of those tickets have to be resolved. And so it's hard, painful work, and nobody on earth wants to release it ASAP more than I do. Trust me, I want it out there too because I hate being the bad guy, but you got to do it right. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. All right. Let's see. My page Van Conversions Oxford shows up very well for Van Conversions Oxford. However, it comes in at number 36 for Van Conversions when searched in Oxford. How do I improve this? Well, technically, those are two searches. Well, how could that be? How could Seattle Plumber be different than Plumber Seattle? They're different searches. And the reason they're different searches is because part of their rank score components is different. And the part that jumps to mind is the exact match portion of the scoring algorithm will be different when you search for Seattle Plumber versus Plumber Seattle. And because that causes differences in scoring, you tend to get a lot of the same results in slightly different orders, and sometimes you get a different or two result thrown in the mix. And so you can go and test these principles and search. But what does that mean? How do you tune for it? I don't want a page for Seattle Plumber and a page for Plumber Seattle. That's overkill. And so typically what we recommend in those cases where they're virtually identical and logically you feel they should be the same, usually in those cases, you just want to mention it both ways on the page. Just cover your bases for the exact match scoring part. Lee, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean you're missing some, geographic signals. So, we talk about this a lot in we spent actually 2 weeks on this and tested SEO training and stuff like that. So we're not going to go into the details of it, but they are completely different searches. Ted is right about that. So
All right. Let's see. There's a question. Is there official document that I can share with client? I think that's in relation to Cora, and no, I don't recommend giving Cora reports to clients. I will tease them in a presentation. I will screenshot small important pieces, but I never give the mountain of data to a client because it's too overwhelming. But as a sales tool, clients love to see that you're working with empirical measurements and you have a plan backed by data and evidence. So I share aspects of Cora with clients. I do not share Cora with clients. Thoughts on that?
yeah, no, some people do because simply, sometimes you have clients that, I've watched some YouTube videos and I get this SEO thing, and you show them the data that you're working with, and their heads start swimming and they realize, hey, maybe I'm not an SEO professional. Maybe I need to hire you to do the job. So it helps establish a degree of professionalism.
What's the best for analyzing entities? TextRaiser or Google NLP API? What you actually want is the complete list of relevant entities, and no one tool is currently best at getting you the complete list because they all give you a partial list. And so I think the best advice here is multiple tools would give you a more complete answer, but only your brain right now can actually make the most relevant outcome. And so that's, if you're Lee's famous example, if you're trying to rank for apple pie, what are the words that would come up often in conversations about apple pie? And those are the relevant entities, the oven, temperature, cinnamon, crust, sugar. Those are the relevant entities. And you need to be careful if you're looking at keywords like Seattle plumber. You want to go big on entities for plumber and you want to go light on entities for Seattle because you don't want a Seattle page, right? So there is a proportionality to your topical relevance that needs consideration. And with that, a lot of people are like, I need to have, the most of each entity. I would make an argument that it might be more important, at least early on, to have a complete collection than to necessarily have the most of any one card. And so treat it like a Pokemon collection. You want the whole collection. You don't want 175 Pikachus. All right. I know that reference specifically hit 100% of our audience. Thoughts?
Yeah. So here's the thing, and this is something that people can't get away from. And I'm going to do this as think of this as a public service because I want this to be that way. We cannot see, there are 0 tools that can see inside of Google's knowledge graph. 0. There are tools that purport to, but there are 0 tools that can do it. So any tool that's grabbing entities, if I grab a page right now, the words he, she, and it are actually entities. They may not be related to SEO. They may not be related to family plumbing or whatever else, but they're entities. So when you grab entities off a page or off a SERP, everybody's tool is making some decisions based on some criteria about what's included and what isn't included. And we know that all of them are wrong. All of them. There's none. And we can't verify the degree of correctness because we can't say, here's what our tool has and here's what the knowledge graph says because we don't have this piece of information. So at the end of the day, you have a lot of tools that are grabbing entities and are claiming superiority based on no data whatsoever because nobody's gone out and said, well, let me grab entities from Cora and TextRaiser and this tool and that tool and the other tool, and let me build some pages, multiple pages with those entities and see which ones rank better. Nobody's done that. So the best that you can do is use multiple tools, take a look at the list, use your best judgment, as Ted said. There's no other way to do it. So.
All right. Let's do one more and wrap it. Sorry, we can't get to everything. Let's find a good one.
Terry asked, how many clicks should I expect from a Super Bowl ad? 17, Terry. That's it.
Uh, none. It's television, right?
That's another way of getting it. Yep.
Yeah. Correct answer is 0. You'll get branded search, but you'll get no clicks through the TV.
I don't know. A lot of these things are putting up QR codes now. So, does that count as a click?
Technically, it's more of a scan.
Tomato, sir. Tomato.
All right. With that, let's wrap it because we're 43 minutes late on the end time. So thank you everyone for your questions, and my apologies if we didn't get to your question. It pays to ask them earlier in the session, so feel free to repeat them next week if we didn't get to them this week. And thank you again for watching.